You know what? This actually might be our very new normal. Virtual, in class, a hybrid, a little of this, a little of that. Homebound, homeschool. What are the requirements? What are the restrictions? What are the benefits? And what does that look like? I want to talk about those instructional settings. If we haven't met, I'm Karen Mayer Cunningham, Special Education Boss, helping families navigate and negotiate the 504 IEP process. So let's talk about this. So I obviously unpacked a thing that I unpacked because now you guys all want to know about homebound and not hospitalization, but homebound and homeschool. And so they're very different things. So I want to clear that up for you guys and as much as I can. Um, hey, you guys. So there is a difference, and this very well might be our new normal. We might be going back to taking over our kiddos' education so that we know that we have continuity, consistency, and kind of what does that look like. So first we're going to talk about instructional settings. So there are many instructional settings, and as advocates, we know that. And that instructional settings says to the committee, the IEP committee, where is the best place to implement these IEP goals? And they're called instructional arrangements and or settings. So every state has statutes. Hopefully they line up with the federal law. So this is for Texas, adaptations for special populations, special education services, and settings. So let's kind of give you an overview really quickly of those. Number one is mainstream. And we all know that the stream has been not mained. Okay. Mainstream is obviously your kiddo's IEP or 504. It's implemented at their home campus with their non-disabled peers to the maximum extent possible with services, supports, modifications. Number two is homebound. What is homebound? I really want you guys to be clear about this because a lot of you guys are calling the schools, making them a little crazy, that saying that you want homebound. Here's what homebound is. It's very clean. Let me read it to you. It's a state regulation, which of course aligns with the federal regulation. Imagine that. Students served on a homebound or hospital basis are expected to be confined for a minimum of 4 consecutive weeks as documented by a physician licensed to practice in the United States. That would be helpful. Homebound instruction may include local district policy, also provide chronically ill students who are expected to be confined for any period of time, totaling at least 4 weeks through the school year as determined by a physician licensed in the United States. The student's IEP committee shall determine the amount of services for the student in accordance with federal, state rules and regulations, including provisions specified in subsection B of the section. So here's what homebound is not. You never leaving your home. So I could be wrong, but I hear that a lot from parents. They're being told by schools that homebound means you can't leave your home. No, you're not a parolee. You're not under house arrest. It's homebound. So it's a student who's expected to miss up to 4 weeks of instruction due to illness, anxiety, some sort of reason verified by a medical doctor that impedes the student from going to school. So being concerned or afraid or worried about COVID does not meet eligibility for homebound. You don't need to call and ask for homebound. And homebound is it's driven by and begun by a doctor's letter, a medical doctor, not a veterinarian, but a medical doctor, not that veterinarians aren't real doctors. And then we have to wait for that doctor then to release them. So usually in Texas, homebound is for a kiddo in kindergarten up would be 4 hours a week, and some related and instructional services. So very restrictive, one of the most restrictive settings. It's not something we ask for because of the COVID. Okay, I have lots of kiddos that have a history of chronic illnesses. I have a kiddo that's homebound because he's part of a group of kiddos testing a new medicine for his disability. So they're very unique situations. They're very rare. Okay. Number three, another setting is hospitalization. Resource. Who doesn't love some resource? Self-contained, mild or moderate. That's an instructional setting at school where it's more than 50% of their day is in a self-contained room. Non-public day school, vocational program, residential and treatment facility, and state-supported living center. So what is homebound? It is when a child has an illness, a condition that presents medically that a medical doctor can verify, and he's unable to be successful at school for health reasons, maybe for an emotional reason, but he can't go to school. So then that goes to the IEP committee, and we start homebound services. You're only released once the doctor releases you. So that's not going to be a setting for almost all of you. Okay. So let's talk about homeschooling. I'm getting a lot of questions about homeschooling, and homeschooling is for kids that are schooled at home, kind of what we were in the spring, right? So it's not for everybody, but there are lots of supports and services and strategies and co-ops and groups around it. I kind of want to talk about what that looks like. So some of my families are unenrolling their kiddos from school. I've recommended for them to unenroll their kiddos for whatever reason, because they don't want virtual, they don't want an IEP amendment, they don't want it to be confusing for their kiddos, so they're unenrolling them from school and they're going to homeschool them, which is completely your right. When you unenroll your child from school and they have a current intact IEP with current evaluations, it's good for a minimum of 36 instructional weeks. So nothing happens to your IEP. So this is how you start homeschooling. First of all, you would follow state laws. We kind of like that, unless you're one of those like rogue states, like, well, you know who they are. So number one, research and comply with your state laws. They're very different in every state. Ours in Texas, pretty liberal. I think the homeschooling started in 1994, I believe. Well, it didn't start then, but they had specific parameters around it. Number two, depending on the options available in your state, choose the option you wish to homeschool under. This can simply be being registered with your district as a homeschooler or enrolling in an umbrella school. So there's different homeschool methods. Number three, follow notifications. You can't just, some of my clients are like, I just don't go. No, that's not how it works. You have to notify that your school that you're going to be homeschooling, which would mean that you unenroll your child from school. Number four, you have to choose a curriculum. You can't just say we're homeschooling and we're going to watch QVC all day and, Captain Underpants. I don't think that's a curriculum. It might be. Number five, teach the required subjects for your state laws as part of your curriculum. So I was reading on this, and there's, I want to say Pennsylvania, I don't know, one of those states. The requirement for you to homeschool your kiddo is that you would have a minimum of 45 college credit hours. So you want to make sure what those requirements are to be the person delivering that curriculum or product. And you want to make sure that you are doing the things that they're asking you to do. Almost every state, you're required to teach reading, writing, math, spelling, grammar, geography, history, social studies, those sorts of things. So those are requirements in your state. You would have to find out what the requirements are based on the kiddo's age. Keep records. Oh my gosh, did they say keep records? Data, right? So you can't just show up and say, hey, we finished 8th grade, we're ready for high school. Doesn't work that way. Keep records. You will be required per your state to keep records of the courses that you taught. Were they online? Were they a book that you purchased? Were they a system that you purchased? Because there are requirements in your state for each grade to have specific instruction in specific content areas. And then it says, start enjoying your learning together. Okay. So, so there's lots of reasons for homeschooling. A lot of these reasons for us have been kind of, it's the option that is left right now. It's the most safe option, so my families feel like. So there are so many great homeschool websites. There is homeschool.com, timeforlearningforum.com, A to Z Homeschool, Secular Homeschool, Let's Homeschool High School. So these are lots of homeschool sites that kind of give you guidelines and parameters about what you can teach. You're going to have to plan your year. We don't just go, you know what, we'll just cram Christmas Eve and get everything done. You're going to have to plan your year. You're going to have a like instructional year. You're going to have to plan your day. So what does that look like? A morning schedule would be 8:30 to 12. You're going to have to use the right materials for your child, the right time and for the right child. Each kiddo has a different learning style, and so be sure that you are finding a product that works for them. There's homeschooling in all of the stages, preschool, elementary school, middle school, and high school. Those are when you have to be obviously the most specific because your state requires specific credits to graduate. So in Texas, it's either 22 credits on a foundational plan or a foundational plan of 22 credits plus endorsements, which could be 26 and or up, depending on what your goal is for your student after that. So here are some frequently asked questions about homeschooling. Can you start homeschooling at any time? Can you just like we went to school for COVID, we didn't like it, now we're going to homeschool? Once you've made the decision to homeschool, you can start doing it anytime. So even if the school year is already started, but you have to follow your state guidelines. So in our state, we just would email inquire, two I's, INQUIRE at spedtex.org, SPEDTEX.org, and they will give you the link for the state requirements. And they're very specific and they're different on each state. In each state, is there funding available for homeschoolers? So while I'm assuming this question, is there federal funding, right? So if you have a child with an IEP, the public school is receiving federal funding for those students. Is there federal funding available for homeschoolers? No, there's no federal funding for homeschool. Some states offer different options for homeschooling, which are covered and or paid by the government. Some of them provide provisions for a charter school, and sometimes you can get services. So can I homeschool and my child with an IEP still get their related services, instructional services, counseling is related service? And the answer is maybe. So in Texas, there's no requirement for the school district that you're in to provide related and instructional services. However, it's been my experience that they almost always do. That special ed director in your district, your local education agency, has to grant that. So if you're in Elm Independent School District and you homeschool and you want, Elm Junior High to provide related and instructional services, that is a request made to the school district. And then if that's granted, you set up times that are amenable to you and the service provider. They do not have to do that in Texas. Okay. What qualifications do you need to homeschool your child? Like children. That would probably be helpful. It doesn't say that. Varies from state to state. Most states don't have any requirements, while a few require a minimum of a high school diploma. For example, parents homeschooling in Washington must have earned 45 college credits. So, or there's a parent qualifying course to teach. How much does it cost to homeschool? Homeschooling varies depending on obviously if you're part of a co-op and what they participate in. Is homeschooling more efficient than public school? So this is not the homeschooling public school showdown. Whatever's right for your kiddo is what's right for your kiddo. So the answer to this question is both subjective. Many would agree that there are pros and cons associated with both. It's important to take several factors into consideration when determining if homeschooling is more efficient and effective than public school, such as flexibility, cost, socialization. You typically have endless flexibility when it comes to what and when your child learns. Do homeschool students perform better? What do you think the answer is? Studies have shown that homeschool students perform better on tests and score higher than their overall public school peers. The same statistics hold true once they go on to colleges and university. Perhaps this is due to the fact that homeschooling allows for a more personal learning environment as opposed to a class full of 30 kiddos. Do colleges accept homeschool students? Well, of course. Can homeschool students participate in UIL, in sports at your school, in cheerleading, and that is almost always a yes. You would have to, again, reach out to your district and see how that is allowed and what the process is for participating. So a lot of people want to know about homeschooling. So there are specific requirements. So if you're going to unenroll your child during this time of, I don't know what we're going to do learning, if that's the way that you feel that your child would best meet their educational needs, then there is a process for that. It's quite a clean, simple process. First, you would have to notify your school. How do you notify them? We do it in writing. So this is my formal notification to let Elm Elementary School know that I will be unenrolling Billy Smith. Thank you. So, because thank you is always helpful. So you unenroll them, you make sure that you have picked or selected a curriculum that passes your state standards, if there's a standardization for that. You make sure that you have the qualifications. One of the questions is, can my mom homeschool my kiddos while I'm at work? Can Aunt Betty? Again, it's usually said in the law, anybody that has parental influence or authority over a student is allowed to provide that. Obviously, you want to have as much consistency as possible. When you want to come back to school, you should notify the school as well. We've decided that we want to come back. Right now, it's every grading period. You have that decision. And then you will have to provide the school with their required documents, what you worked on, what you completed. Did you earn credits? Did you earn dual credits? Those sorts of things. Again, if you return and your IEP is still within that 36 instructional weeks, then we just pick up where we were. If you have data to support to present to the IEP committee that your kiddos' needs have changed, then you would certainly provide that then. So that's the difference. So a lot, surprisingly, a lot of our families are going to go with homeschooling, which is great because you kind of did that in the spring anyway. So this is a great little guide for families for homeschooling. This guide was compiled and provided by timeforlearning.com. So time, T-I-M-E, the number 4, learning.com, timeforlearning.com. So it's a guide for families for homeschooling, and there's a bucket. That's a very large amount of information in there. So again, we talked about this yesterday. We're going to I'll keep unpacking it. What are kind of your 4 choices? Our 4 choices are what? Go to school, go inside of the building, right? And then you will be inside of the building. I was on a call today, and lots of people on the call. Obviously, the recommendation, there's lots of words, recommendation, mandate, is to wear a mask. We're not going to wrestle a minor to the ground and or throw them out of school if they're not wearing a mask. So lots of parents asking me about that. So certainly we would like to, we would like for them to wear it, but we don't want it to be a distraction or upsetting to them or impede their learning or the learning of others. Hi, we're looking at a partial day remote learning combined with partial homebound. Is there any word if homebound is ever remote? I think in-person homebound would be more effective. So of course, if you have homebound services, if you've been granted homebound services, and the only option is virtual, then your product comes virtually, right? So, and that might be a consideration that you have based on, you could continue virtual homebound, but homebound when the school is open is going to be in person. Again, remember, this time now is not a consideration of a denial of faith. You have this fall, you have not been denied faith unless something happens, right? Unless Noah's Ark comes back, or I don't know, a Martian. But as it's set up now, when we all go back to school, when you have options, if you choose to change instructional settings, right? Instructional settings, you cannot say that you were denied FAPE. You cannot say you were denied FAPE, your student was harmed, and you cannot be asking for compensatory education because an IDEA violation has not occurred. So again, we're having, 7,000 meetings a day. If you agree to something and it's not going to be at the campus, you need to get it in writing. You really do need to get that in writing and what the expectations are and the parameters. So homeschooling is going to be an option for kiddos, for people. Obviously, it has its pros and cons. There are lots of families now that are homeschooling, and I'll just put their names up here and their cell numbers. You can call them. You can drop your kid off at their house. So number 1 is Mandy. Her number is, just kidding. So there might be another moms with kiddos with differences or neurologically typical, neurotypical, whatever that means, right? And they've decided to stay homebound. So maybe that's something that you can partner with them. You can join a co-op. You can still do homebound. Homebound. You can do homeschooling, and then you can certainly ask the school to still provide the related and or instructional services. Again, that's granted by the special education director. Somebody asked me, because of COVID, can we get retention? So if retention was a conversation that you had before COVID, then that certainly would be a conversation that I would continue. But retention because of COVID is unlikely to be granted. So again, do your best, make the best decision you can with the information you have. We want to give you as much information as we have. And of course, it's changing every day. I know it is August 3rd, so some of you at midnight, ding, have to make a decision. So remember, whatever you choose, campus, virtual, hybrid, homebound, hospitalization, whatever, you're going to be committed to that commitment for a minimum of a grading period. So a grading period is probably 6 weeks, it's probably 9 weeks. So, all the things to consider. It's not an easy decision. I know that you guys are going to make the best decisions. Remember, we're doing this for one reason: successful student outcomes. We care about 3 things: gainful employment, independent living, and further education. That's where we're headed, our kiddos. And when we get it right for the child, and we get it right a lot, we get it right for everybody. So keep serving those kiddos, keep loving those kiddos. We're going to have more information for you guys as it continues to unfold, what it looks like. Should you wear a mask? Should you wear gloves? Should you wear a beaded ball gown? All those things. So I think we're getting closer back to normal, whatever normal was or is. If you have questions and you want us to be part of the training, or you want your questions asked in the next video, just send it to Karen at specialeducationboss.com. That's Karen at specialeducationboss.com. I would love to tell you that I read all of the comments. That is not true. So I want to, but I am not doing that. So if you have a specific question that you want read or addressed on the live, just email it to me. If you have, a lot of you guys are sending me stuff that your school is emailing you. Oh, so we won't talk about that. So thanks for loving your kiddos. Homeschool, homebound, that should clear some things up for you guys. I know that you're having to decide this week. Make a decision based on your kiddo, your kiddo's needs, and what you feel most comfortable with, because it's your child. And so we will see you in the next video.